Dawson's Rambles.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Ryder here with my annual Best of the Year video. This is obviously going to be Best of 2019, primarily covering Toku related topics here at the start, and then just a few fun little non-Toku related picks like I always do. But let's start with the show. I think, did I say best and worst? This is best and worst, or at least for most of them. Some of them I don't exactly have one for. But let's start with Toku Show of the Year. I wasn't sure which one to give this to because there was kind of some interesting stuff. Like Beast Morphers, I don't think necessarily deserves it because I liked it and it was a good step up, but it wasn't amazing. So I think for me, and I came around to stuff like Ryusoulger, but for me, I have to give it to 01, which is weird because it's not done yet. It's still, in a lot of ways, in its early stages. You know, we're not like within the first 5 episodes, but, you know, compared to the other ones, which are basically finished, or at least finished for a season, this is the least done. But I really have been enjoying it so far. I love the tech, I love the suits, I've been enjoying the story, and especially after kind of a downer year for me with Geo, it was nice to remind me what I like about Ryder, so I'm giving Toku of the Year for me to 01, even if it's not done yet. Speaking of, on the other side of that coin, worst of, you probably have guessed, for me the worst Toku of the Year was Geo, which might be controversial to some people when Ryusoulger's there, but I kind of came around to Ryusoulger. It's not like, oh my god, it's amazing, but it's like, fine. It's like a fine Sentai. Like, it's a Sentai experience. It's decently enjoyable. It's certainly gotten better. Like I mentioned, I like Beast Morphers. I think it deserves, you know, some acknowledgement for improving, but I don't think it's winning any awards, obviously, since that's what's happening here. But for me, Geo just really represented everything I don't like about Toku, which is messy, awful plots where it seems like they don't care about logic, and shallow cameos. I'm not saying all the cameos were bad. There was some really well done ones that I enjoyed, aspects of it, but it just really represented, like I said, that stuff I don't like about Toku, and then that mindset of what I don't like about Toku from some of the fans. And again, if you're like that, I'm not saying I'm mad or anything. It's just something that bothers me of this idea of, well, yeah, this is a mess, but this person came back as a cameo, so it's good now. And that's just so much of what I hate about the genre. It kind of is like Build and then 01 to a degree now represent and remind me why I like Toku and Ryder, and then Geo reminds me of the things I despise about it. So even though there were some aspects I liked about it, it just, I think of the ones of 2019, I had the least pleasant experience with. Usually in previous years and on previous podcasts I used to be on, I would talk about like Toku Movie of the Year, best and worst, but honestly I saw so few of them, and I've kind of like let them fall by the wayside when they come out. Not to mention, usually the ones we get to watch are from like last year because of the schedule. And I've kind of decided that I'm just not going to watch the majority of Toku movies anymore because I don't like the stupid crossover movies. And I've mentioned before, you know, it's not special anymore because they team up every Tuesday. So I think I'm just gonna not watch them anymore and then hope that it'll become special again later when I try to revisit them and maybe I'll find some gems. But the point is, I don't really have any picks because I've watched very few of them. I wanted to give it to Heisei Generations for worst, but that came out last year, even though I saw it this year. But so there's no Toku movie for that or anything like that. Now moving on to the toy realm. For best of the year, let's start with Ryder. I think my favorite toy of the year for Ryder was the 01 Hidden Driver. I just really liked that. Like the Shot Riser was cool too, Force Riser as well, but I really like the Hidden Driver. Not one of my all-time favorite aesthetic designs, but I do like the design of it, but I just like the way it works. I love ones where the sounds work together with both the gimmick and the driver, especially when compared to ones where you have the driver just being a shell, and I like when they work together. I like the sounds in general. It's a nice break from the crackhead noises and the sing-songiness. There is some sing-songiness in there, but I was really sick of it by Geo, and 01 just has such cool noises, and I just love the tech of the progress keys and how it works. It's the most fun I've had in several years with Toku gimmick, especially after stuff like Geo, and even Build. Like, I loved Build, but the bottles got old, and it's not perfect, but I really like the tech of the progress keys. For worst Ryder toy of the year, I don't really have a clear pick. I couldn't think of something specifically, like a single toy that really disappointed me on the level that I felt like calling it the worst. So instead I'm going to have a sort of pick where I just wanted to talk for a second about how I've really been disappointed with the quality of Rider figure arts that have been going down. When I first started this channel, it was early on when I was collecting figure arts, and they felt like amazing there. Even though now they made the renewal figures that like kind of outclass them look-wise, but it used to feel like there was much more care put into them. They honestly felt like a figure worth of the more expensive price tag. Like it felt like this is a collector grade figure of this rider that I love. And now it feels like they're cutting so many corners. They feel, even if they look nice sometimes, they feel cheap. They're missing stuff that's in the exclusives, and it just feels like a lot less of a quality item than it did when it first started. And I think that's probably the thing I was been most disappointed about more than this last year, and that's the only thing I could think of that I wanted to draw attention to for this category. Now moving on to Sentai. For favorite Sentai toy of the year, kind of in a broader category, I think I'm going to say the Ryusoulger Mecha line. I actually mostly wound up liking the Ryusoulger line overall. Like, I really liked the Gaisolkin and the Ryusoul Calibur. I thought those were two really cool toys, improvements over the Ryusoulkin, which I really liked. But the Mecha line in general I thought was really nice. There isn't really a design I dislike, and I think there's a really great amount of playability. Some little bit minus points for the fact that they didn't come up with any Fuster Cluck designs of their own. Like, it was the perfect series to do it, and obviously you can do it on your own, and people have. But I've been disappointed in recent years anyway that we haven't gotten a big Fuster Cluck mecha, but this was like the perfect opportunity for them to return to it, and it's really disappointing they didn't. But that being said, I think they have some really great designs that are fun to mess around with if you have a few of them to make different combinations, so I think that was a really joyous part of this year. For worst Sentai toy of the year, this is one where I'm not trying to be too harsh on it. It's more of a I'm not mad, disappointed situation, but I want to say Ryusouls. I love the concept of them. I like the concept of the little knight guy that's kind of a ranger key, and then you fold it and it's got the little dino head. I love the concept of it in general, and like I do love the ranger and power-up ones. There's some especially that I think look really nice, and like I have a little display of them in front of the vinyls, and it looks cool. I like the concept, I like some of them, but I feel like in general they could have been so much more, especially the ability ones. You know, you have like the different weapon and then the different head, but they could have so easily made the knights a little bit more different, and especially the backings of the helmets, since each one of them can be used as a helmet for the mecha. They could have made all the helmets different. I know that probably would have cost a lot to do a different mold for each of them, but I feel like there's something they could have done to differentiate them, and the only reason I'm putting it as worse is because it's like, it was this close to greatness. If they had just made some tweaks to make them all stand out more, it could have been an amazing gimmick, because you could have had it stand out look-wise in multiple different ways, and even unlock some more different sounds, and it was just something that really disappointed me about that line that I think I've overall mostly enjoyed. For Best Power Rangers toy, of the year, I thought that there was some really good stuff out of PR this year. I'm not saying it was a perfect year for Hasbro's first year, but I thought it was a very solid showing, lots of cool stuff to collect. And honestly, I had a hard time thinking of one toy that really stood out, or one section of toys that really truly stood out, of like, man, this was the best. I ended up going with the Lightning Collection, and that's been a little bit mixed for sure. And again, even that didn't stand out as like, yep, this is the pick, this is the cream of the crop. But I think it's been pretty cool. They've not been perfect, definitely some growing pains and some problems that I've had, but for the most part, they've been pretty cool Power Rangers figures, and I've been really impressed by the amount we got this year, and the variety and stuff like that. And that was a cool thing to collect this year, and they definitely had some standout figures, so I think that was ultimately the one that I had to pick for that. Now for worst, it is going to be Gold and Silver's Nerf-based Morpher. I mean, that's going to be a toy that obviously I think kids will like. You know, if you give that to your kid for Christmas, or give it to your kid for Christmas or a birthday or whatever, just give it to your kid. But like, it's a toy they'll like, and I totally like that idea of the Nerf partnership and that being an offshoot, but it really sucks that the Six Ranger Morphers have been put to the side ever since the Neo Saban era. Like I said in the review for it, the Six Ranger Morphers were always this huge excitement for me and my friends when I was younger, and it was like, oh my god, the Six Ranger Morpher's out. And now it's been relegated to a B-level toy, and I was really hoping that was something Hasbro wouldn't carry over, and they did. I think that this toy could totally exist in addition to a regular Morpher, and the fact that this was the main Morpher we got for them was really disappointing. But even so, like I said, this is something that will be fun for kids, but even in that realm, I think it's a little bit of a failure, because we have the Cheetah Blaster, which is along the same family, family, a little bit bigger of a class, but along the same family, and it felt like a much more quality toy. It looked nicer, it looked more like the show. So if you're a collector like myself, that makes a solid piece for display of the weapons that are in the show. And so even though they're both in that kind of fun Nerf line, even just within the context of that, it felt like a huge quality step down, and that's why it was the worst for me. To be honest, I don't really have any picks for non-Toku toys this year. You know, I did some Ben 10 reviews and the Bakugan and Turtles and stuff like that, and I collected the other stuff that I don't cover on the channel, like Star Wars, and all the stuff I still enjoy, but there really wasn't much that stood out to me that was like, again, this is the toy that I want to talk about in this video. So, as for just some fun non-Toku related picks, I always like to talk about movie of the year. I don't have a worst of the year. I did see more movies this year than I ever had in theaters. I usually just go see like Star Wars and comic book movies, but there was a bunch more that I saw this year. And so I saw a lot of movies, but there really wasn't one that I've seen that I know for a fact was made this year that I thought was really awful, to be honest. For best of the year, how's this for a basic bench pick? For me, it was Endgame. Again, basic bench pick. I waited to make this video till after I saw Star Wars, because I wasn't sure, because if you can't tell, I love me some Star Wars. In fact, I would put Star Wars as a franchise above my love of like Marvel and MCU, and I did like it. I definitely had my problems with it, but this isn't a Rise of the Skywalker video. But I was curious, but this was just an experience. Like this movie was not perfect. There was some nitpicks I had for sure, but I thought it was a really satisfying conclusion, and more than anything, in a lot of ways, this was a truly kind of amazing experience to see it opening night in theaters. Just the energy of the people, like comparing it to seeing Skywalker. There was some moments where people clapped and stuff, and I usually like a quiet theater. I'm a pretty reserved guy normally with that. But there was something special about people just cheering like absolutely out of their minds when Cap caught Thor's hammer and stuff like that. It felt like just a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So like this was like the movie experience for me for the year. Again, I don't have a worst movie. I don't have really a worst show either, unless you count Geo, but I can't think of anything that I felt worth mentioning. So just for best show, there was a bunch of cool shows returning and new that I really liked, you know, Mandalorian, stuff like that, but again, I think I have to give it to The Boys TV, which was on Amazon, which is an adaptation of the comic, and it was a really cool show. It was really fun, a little bit dark, really interesting, and then I wound up reading the comic after I finished the first season, and there were some good parts to it. Like, I'd heard of it before, but I decided to watch the show first and then read the comic, and honestly, I think the show's better. Like, I'm kind of weird that way with a lot of comic adaptations, whether it's movie or TV. I often think they make, even if the end product sometimes doesn't turn out as good, I think they often make better decisions, but that's for another time. But I thought that it was better. Like, the comic felt very mean-spirited, and the show felt a lot more balanced. So, if you're of the right age range to watch that show, I definitely recommend checking it out. I think it was one of the coolest things that happened this year for me personally. As for, lastly, just real quickly, games, that was a weird year for me. Last year or two, I've been really falling behind on gaming, and I haven't been as into it. And this year, I only played a small handful of games, and it's been a weird year. A lot of stuff was like, yeah, I enjoyed that, but nothing's really standing out. But I had two mentions. I can't really give a definitive, like, oh my god, this is my game of the year. But for story, Jedi Fallen Order was really cool. The gameplay on this was fun in a lot of ways, but also really frustrating. Like, it made me stop making me backtrack. Anyway, I'm over it, but I'm not. There's some frustrating things about the gameplay, and this was kind of a glitchy game, to be honest. Like, actually really glitchy. But the story was really cool, and there was some really satisfying stuff. It was a really cool Star Wars experience. But gameplay-wise, this was actually more fun. I think this is more of a unique game. Control, I loved Remedy games, and I loved Quantum Break, so I was hoping for something similar here. It's definitely got a different narrative, but some of the powers felt the same. And to be honest, the Force powers in this felt way more satisfying than this. They're not Force powers, but you know what I mean. But these were the two games I think I enjoyed most this year, but I wouldn't say either one of them was like, oh, game of the year, and like I was pretty bad at gaming this year. But anyway, that is about it for my 2019 list. As always, let me know in the comments what you guys think, not about necessarily my picks, but like what are your picks of 2019, your favorite Toku, favorite show, favorite movie, favorite food, whatever. I always like to see that type of stuff. Until next time, here's to hopefully a great 2020. Hopefully all this COPPA stuff sorts out a bit. I think that things are looking better for it and stuff like that. But until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for all my videos. Until next time, Dawson Ryder, signing out.